You know, one of the things I think we lose track of is any progress we've ever made. First of all, backing up and talking a minute about rights, I mean, it's only in the last couple hundred years that the thousands years history of states has a state done anything to forward human freedom. I mean, the states are not the vehicle for human freedom, right? I mean, that's only recent that and when they have granted human freedom, it's only been in reaction to tremendous pressure from below. So my politics tell me again and again that our job is to organize fire from below, because that's the only way in which you're going to ever see forward progress. And the state will only move if you move it. So in our history, you know, Lyndon Johnson, who passed the most far-reaching civil rights legislation since Reconstruction, was a cracker from Texas. He didn't think that up on his own. That came from fire from below. He was asking King for meetings, not the other way around. Franklin Roosevelt, a patrician from the Hudson Valley, passed the most far-reaching labor legislation. Why? Because of fire from below. And the most killing example is Abraham Lincoln. Nobody in America reads his first inaugural address because it's when he genuflects before the slave owners and says, I have no interest in interrupting slavery. His second inaugural address is the one we memorize as school kids. That could have been written, and maybe was written, by Frederick Douglass. That's the speech in which he says, for every drop of blood drawn by the lash, we will draw a drop of blood by the sword. And he makes a case for reparations. I mean, holy shit, Abe. I mean, but he wasn't always that way. And he was responding to fire from below as well. And so our job is to create that fire from below. Our job is to see the contradictions, the contradictions in the space itself. So the contradiction of white supremacy or human freedom. We need to see that. And you're right to say that freedom is one of those terms that anyone can deploy it for any reason. You know, even the word revolution, you know, we in the United States, we have revolutionary deodorant. I mean, and revolutionary potato chips. I mean, it's crazy. But that means that puts a bigger burden on us simply to be very clear about what we're talking about. So when we're talking about freedom, for me, we have to be talking about, we have to be naming unfreedom. The unfreedom in front of us is what makes freedom come into view. And often it's the case that the times we feel most free isn't that we've arrived at a destination, we're sitting on our couch smoking a joint, I'm free. That's not when you feel free. When you feel free is when you've named something standing in your way and you've linked arms with others to change it. And there are so many examples, and I'll give you one in American history. Frederick Douglass, one of his great scenes in his autobiography is when he writes about a time when his master's son came to beat him. And he stood up and he fought the man. And he fought him to a standstill. He could have bloodied him and hurt him, but he decided not to. And he fought the man to a standstill, and miraculously he wasn't punished. But when he wrote about it later, he said, for those few minutes, I was free. I felt free. He wasn't free. He wasn't free in any sense except in the sense of standing up against oppression. Naming it, being open about it, standing up against it. That's what makes you free.
That sounds like me, because I'm not a big guy, but I'll never back down. So I just get my ass kicked all the time.
Excellent. If it's for the right reason.
Well, mostly. Just, yeah, I mean, and I'm a strong believer in, you know, equality and empathy and, you know, Jesus Christ. I look around and I see just swaths and big groups of people that are incapable of feeling something for other people. And I guess that's what we're talking about. Yeah,
we are. I mean, I think it's part of the human condition, but I also think it's part of American culture in a very extreme sense. So we suffer in this country from a kind of culture of toxic individualism. The heroes in the culture are the John Wayne, the Western cowboy, you know, and we kind of promote these things to the point where our language lacks any nod even towards social or collective. You were mentioning Ronald Reagan before, and Ronald Reagan, of course, famously said, the government, is not the solution. The government is the problem. And his evil twin, Margaret Thatcher, said, there is no such thing as society. There is no such thing. So you take those two pillars, and that's the culture of American reactionary politics today. There's no such thing as society, and government isn't the solution to your problem. It is the problem. So that means, for example, that when we talk about public safety, the answer is get a gun, protect yourself. When we talk about public schools, we're saying buy the best education you can get. We're not saying that it's a human right. When we talk about public health, we're saying stay healthy. We don't have a public health system anymore in the United States. And it means when we face something like this pandemic, it's very hard to turn on a dime and say, all these decades, it's every boat on its own bottom. Now suddenly we're a collective. We're not a collective. We don't see ourselves that way. And in international surveys, the United States always comes out on top when it comes to the question of individualism. So everything gets reduced to the individual level. Everything is, and even the word public is another contested term. Public is a racialized term in the United States. When people talk about public welfare, they're not talking about general dynamics sucking on the government's breast. They're talking about poor black people in the inner city. Yeah. When they say public hospital, you imagine a rundown hospital in the city. You know, public housing, it's a wreck. Why? Why is public racialized? And why is the public the enemy somehow of progress and liberty?
I will say something about public restrooms. They are quite disgusting. But
well, but they shouldn't be.
They shouldn't be. They could be.
We should.
If we changed our values, maybe we could live in this where people wouldn't be. They wouldn't be carving swastikas into the toilet seat in a public.
No, that's exactly my point. You know, in fact, when my son was district attorney of San Francisco, and he often said, you know, the problems that you all keep talking about are not criminal justice problems. They're social problems. So you don't like people urinating in the street on Market Street and on Mission Street, fine. Put in beautiful toilets with somebody who's an attendant. You know, have a flower pot in each sink. Yeah. You know, and give people an opportunity to live with dignity. Yeah. And it's so easy for me to imagine how we could do that on so many levels. The fact that we have become accustomed to seeing unhoused children on the streets of Chicago and Los Angeles and New York is appalling. And that's another example where you know, you ask middle class anesthetized people, and I'll get to that in 1 second. I've given you another thought. But when you ask people, well, you know, look at all the homelessness, and you say, well, why don't they find a house? Because they can't. And then you listen to ads on the TV or the radio about medicine. You know, the United States actually advertises medicine. They don't do that where you are, but they advertise medicine. It's always these chirpy young people looking great, and they could cure their skin problems with this pill. And then they have to obligatorily say what the downside is, and it's anal bleeding and suicidal thoughts. But what the hell? You'll have clear complexion. It's insane. It's
as long as I lick the people in the commercials, I'll take whatever.
Yeah, exactly. But that's the point. Everything's for sale. And you know, I said this about ask middle class people. The thing that people, I think, often miss about the problem of privilege is that the real problem of privilege isn't that some people have stuff and other people don't. It's that privilege anesthetizes you. Privilege puts you to sleep. So it's hard for white people to see, and it takes effort for white people to see what the experience of a cop in your neighborhood is for a black kid on the South Side. It's hard for men to see what women go through. It's hard for straight people to understand gay people. And that means that you have to make a conscious effort to listen systematically to the people who are suffering the problems and naming the problems in order to be in solidarity with them, rather than think you're somehow the default position. The arrogance of it is staggering. And when it gets transferred into politics, it leads to authoritarianism and autocracy and a lot else.
Yeah, because our primitive instinct is to be give our brain a break from having to empathize with other people. Let's just try to, and I see that in the most redneck kind of backwoods kind of people. They just really want save energy with their brain and stuff. And my neck, honestly, my neck hurts from agreeing with you so much. I'm sitting here nodding. But I think it goes back to that Margaret Thatcher thing and the Milton Friedman idea of economics that they invented, which is based on complete bullshit, which says every person is equal and has the equal amount of opportunity, which is absolutely untrue.
It is untrue. It's absolutely untrue. But there's another aspect to it, which is the assumption that everyone could be a millionaire is nuts. And so the idea that somehow, instead of seeing the world that we're facing as a world that we're facing collectively, that we actually need one another, that we actually, but to the extent that we fall into the default position of narcissism, and then it has a social base and a social and a cultural push, so that narcissism is not only normalized, but it becomes toxic. When I say it's normal in a certain way, I'll give you an example. If I'm talking to my students and we go to the same seminar, it's my seminar, but I call it my seminar. And I say, my seminar is a pretty good seminar. And I go home and say to my partner, it was a great class. And my student goes home and says to her partner, God, it was so boring, I almost fell asleep. Who's right? I mean, the point is we could both be right from our narrow perspective. But that tells you something about what our problem is as a species. Here's this vast world, this gigantic universe, and we select one tiny thread of it, me, and we start to build an entire world view around me. And on the one hand, that's very normal. I mean, I say my grandchildren, my son. I don't think my granddaughter would ever introduce herself to somebody saying, hi, I'm Bill's granddaughter. No, that's not her. That's not who she is. That's who she is to me. And I think we do that all the time. If I'm telling the story of my birth family, I say my father was a workaholic. My mother was a Pollyanna. My sister was not in touch with her feelings. My other brother was an alcoholic. You know, as soon as I start talking like that, you can see that it's completely insane, right? Because nobody else in that diagram would describe it the way I just described it. My sister wouldn't say, hi, I'm Bill's sister. My name doesn't matter. But I'm out of touch with my feelings anyway. She wouldn't say that. So it's stupid for me to put too much stock in it. Now, we work that way, but as long as we have enough humility to say it's false, I know I think it, but it's false, then we have the possibility. And one of the ways you can get in tune with that is through literature, through art, through systematically going to other people and listening and trying to learn from other people.
Personal suffering, too.
Well, there is that. But even without asking people to suffer, you can read a novel and recognize that there are other people who have a different perspective than you do. And you can build human empathy that way. But, if you take that narcissism to an extreme, and if you make it a political position, there lies autocracy and fascism. The idea that my worldview is the only worldview. So when you have people like the former president of the United States saying, only I can solve it, that is a very fascistic kind of mentality.
When I hear people say stuff like that, my ears go up. I say, watch this guy. He's no good.
Yeah.